What if I told you the reason you keep losing in life has nothing to do with your intelligence, but everything to do with how unaware you are of the game you're in? Most people go through life thinking success is about being good, honest, and hardworking. And while those traits matter, they won't save you in a world ruled by power, perception, and psychology. You don't lose because you're weak. You lose because you're predictable. You give too much away. You trust too fast. You speak before observing. You react before thinking. And the truth is, in this world, people don't always reward your kindness. They take advantage of your blindness. They don't respect honesty if it isn't wrapped in strength. They don't care about your effort if it's not paired with strategy. This world respects power, and power doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it stays quiet and watches. And sometimes it smiles while planning 5 steps ahead. You were taught to play fair in a world that rarely does. You were told to be yourself while everyone else wears a mask. You try to be transparent while others use silence as a weapon. And then you wonder why you feel exhausted, overlooked, or betrayed. It's not because something is wrong with you. It's because you've been playing defense while others were playing offense. And now it's time to shift. Not to become manipulative, not to become cruel, but to become aware, strategic, focused, and above all, emotionally untouchable. Outsmarting others isn't about tricking people. It's about reading the room before speaking. It's about knowing who you are, what you bring, and how to use it without wasting energy. It's about making moves in silence, holding your emotions like a sword, and keeping your intentions hidden until they've already served you. It's about seeing what others miss, patterns, fears, blind spots, and using that awareness to move through life with quiet dominance. Because the truth is, most people are easy to read when you stop speaking and start watching. And once you learn that, you begin to rise, without yelling, without begging, without proving anything to anyone. This is your moment to switch gears, to stop playing the role of the open book and start becoming the mystery, to stop handing over your power for validation and start holding it like currency. Every rule you're about to learn is a step toward that transformation. If you're tired of being outplayed, misunderstood, or overlooked, this is your roadmap. If you've ever felt the sting of being underestimated or manipulated, this is your armor. And if you're ready, not just to protect your peace, but to own the room, command respect, and move through life 10 steps ahead, then keep watching. Because by the time we're done, you won't just understand how to outsmart anyone, you'll start doing it. Quietly, powerfully, without apology. This is not about changing who you are. It's about finally using everything you are to win. If you can't control your emotions, someone else will. Every time you react out of anger, fear, jealousy, or desperation, you hand your power over to someone who knows exactly how to pull your strings. That's how the game works. The person who stays calm, who observes without flinching, who responds without rushing, becomes the most dangerous person in the room. Because while others are busy showing their cards through every word, every twitch, every emotional outburst, you are silently collecting data, building leverage, and preparing to move when it matters most. The world doesn't belong to the loud. It belongs to the calm, the composed, the ones who can feel everything but reveal nothing. The ones who know that emotional intelligence isn't just about empathy, it's about precision. It's about recognizing the storm inside you and refusing to let it drown your clarity. The person who gets under your skin, who makes you lose your temper, who pulls you into drama, they win, not because they're smarter, but because you let them rent space in your mind. And once they're inside, they can control you. They can make you act against your own interests. They can make you forget who you are. But when you begin to master your emotions, everything changes. You stop reacting to noise. You stop defending yourself unnecessarily. You stop feeling the need to prove anything. And in that stillness, you find something most people never do. Total internal power. A kind of silent strength that doesn't need to be seen to be felt. You become unreadable, unshakable, untouchable. Not because you don't feel, but because you no longer leak your emotions for others to exploit. This kind of control isn't cold. It's wise. It's what protects you from people who weaponize your feelings against you. It's what allows you to pause, evaluate, and respond with intention, not impulse. And that pause, those few seconds of silence when everyone expects you to react, is where your power is born. That pause says, I'm not here to be manipulated. I'm here to lead. I'm here to win. You don't owe anyone your emotional reactions. Not your anger, not your panic, not your desperation. You owe yourself clarity, poise, and purpose. Because once you take back emotional control, no one can use your past against you. No one can pressure you with fear. No one can confuse you with chaos. You become the calm in the storm, the steady presence everyone begins to respect, fear, or follow. And that's the moment you stop playing their game and start creating your own. Power isn't always about what you do. Sometimes it's about what you don't do. Don't flinch. Don't react. Don't explain yourself to people who haven't earned your truth. Hold your center. Let them guess. Because when you control your emotions, you control your outcomes. And the one who controls the outcome controls everything. Silence is a weapon most people never learn to use. In a world addicted to noise, those who can stay quiet hold an invisible kind of power. The urge to speak is strong, especially when you feel challenged, misunderstood, or underestimated. But the more you talk, the more you reveal. Every word gives others a map of your mind, your insecurities, your goals, your fears, your weaknesses. And once they know that, they can use it to bend you, control you, or quietly sabotage you without you even realizing it. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood. You don't need to announce your plans to prove you have a direction. Let others underestimate you. Let them wonder, because every moment you stay silent, you force them to fill in the blanks, and that uncertainty is where your strength lives. People fear what they can't predict. They respect what they can't read. And when your silence speaks louder than their noise, you've already won half the battle without lifting a finger. Most people speak to feel important, to feel seen, to feel in control. But the ones who truly hold power don't chase validation. They watch, they listen, they let others expose themselves. Because when you're quiet, you start noticing what others miss. You see patterns, you catch contradictions, you recognize lies before they're even finished, you hear what's not being said, and that awareness gives you a level of insight that no loud voice can ever match. Your silence creates discomfort in those who rely on control. It disrupts manipulators. It unsettles egos. It forces others to confront themselves without your emotional involvement. That's why silence is often mistaken for arrogance or indifference, because it strips others of the emotional feedback they crave. But what they call cold is actually centered. What they call distant is deeply aware. And what they think is weakness is the most strategic move you could ever make. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to respond to every provocation. The one who can stay silent while others scramble to be heard holds a kind of dominance that doesn't need to be announced. Your silence is not the absence of power. It's the presence of mastery. It's the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't need approval, because they already own themselves from the inside out. So speak when it adds value. Speak when it's intentional. Speak when silence has already done its job. But never speak just to fill space. That's where most people lose control. That's where most people get played. Stay still. Stay quiet. Let them wonder what you're thinking. Let them question where you're going. Because while they're busy talking, defending, reacting, you're already 5 moves ahead. And in this world, that's how you win. Not by being louder, but by being smarter. And the smartest move is sometimes saying nothing at all. You weren't meant to waste your energy fighting battles that don't need to be fought. Not every challenge deserves your reaction. Not every situation requires a confrontation. The most powerful people don't win by overpowering others. They win by shifting the entire game in their favor. While most are stuck in the trap of competition, trying to prove themselves through conflict, the intelligent ones bypass the noise entirely. They don't compete where they can influence. They don't force their way through the door. They make others open it willingly. This is the rule most people never learn. Dominance isn't about taking control. It's about creating the illusion that others are in control while you quietly shape the outcome. Influence is more powerful than force. Force makes people resist. Influence makes them align. And once you master this, you stop chasing. You start attracting. You stop struggling to be heard. You start becoming impossible to ignore. Because people listen to those who understand how to speak to their needs, their fears, their identity, not their logic. To truly outsmart anyone, you must learn to observe what they value and speak directly to that. When you align your presence with their internal desires, they lower their guard. They begin to trust. And in that space of trust, you hold the keys. You can plant ideas, shift direction, move minds, all without resistance. Because when people feel seen and heard, they follow the current you create, even if they think it's their own idea. That's how influence works. Subtle, powerful, invisible. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the voice that lives in their mind long after the conversation ends. The one they remember. The one that shaped their next move. And the only way to become that voice is to stop forcing outcomes and start designing them. Not through manipulation, but through deep understanding. Through mastering the art of presence, timing, and precision. When you operate from a place of quiet strategy instead of loud desperation, everything begins to shift. People begin to respect your presence without knowing why. They sense that you don't need to dominate because you already know you're in control. That level of self-assurance makes others lean in. It makes them ask, not demand. Offer, not resist. And that's when you begin to experience what real power feels like. Not the kind that screams for attention, but the kind that silently bends reality to your favor. You were never meant to be in constant conflict. You were meant to operate with such clarity, such emotional control, such depth of awareness that people adjust to you without realizing it. Influence doesn't beg. It doesn't plead. It doesn't shout. It simply exists, confident, silent, undeniable. And when you live in that space, you no longer play by their rules. You write your own, quietly, strategically, unapologetically. People don't follow strength alone. They follow the appearance of strength. It's not always about how capable you are. It's about how capable you seem. Human behavior is shaped by perception far more than by truth. The world won't wait to discover your depth. It will judge you in seconds by your presence, your posture, your tone, and your energy. If you don't learn how to manage that perception, you'll keep being overlooked by those with half your skill but twice your confidence. You'll keep being ignored not because you lack value, but because you don't project it. What you broadcast silently becomes your identity in the eyes of others. And in every environment, work, relationships, life, perception is the first form of power. People assume what they see is what's real. So if you carry yourself with hesitation, you'll be treated with doubt. If you shrink yourself to make others comfortable, you'll be dismissed as forgettable. But when you walk with quiet certainty, when your eyes say you know something they don't, when your energy is calm but unshakable, people feel it, and they react to it instinctively, even if they can't explain why. You were not born to apologize for your presence. You were not created to lower your power for the comfort of those who haven't earned your truth. You were built to command energy without needing to control it. That starts with knowing that your body speaks before your mouth ever does. Your stillness speaks. Your posture speaks. The way you look at someone without flinching, the way you sit without fidgeting, the way you say less and mean more, all of that becomes your armor. All of that tells the world, this is someone who knows who they are. And when the world senses that certainty, it adapts. People listen more carefully. Opportunities approach more frequently. Boundaries are respected more naturally. Because when you carry yourself like someone who doesn't need validation, others stop trying to test you. They stop looking for weakness. They start preparing for strength. And whether you realize it or not, that changes the entire dynamic of how people relate to you. It's not about pretending. It's not about faking. It's about realizing that your presence is a message long before your words are. And that message should be clear. I know what I bring. I don't need to prove it. I don't need to force it. I simply carry it. That energy becomes magnetic. It draws in respect. It silences disrespect. It builds silent authority that doesn't depend on titles, loudness, or approval. When you master perception, you stop chasing power. You start embodying it. And in a world full of noise, the person who doesn't need to announce their strength becomes the one everyone quietly watches. Not because you demand it, but because your presence leaves them no other choice. Powerful people don't talk to impress. They talk to impact. Every word is measured. Every sentence is intentional. There's no rambling, no oversharing, no need to prove anything. Because they know the moment you start speaking just to fill silence, you start giving others access to your mind. And in the wrong hands, that access becomes a weapon. The smartest people in any room aren't always the ones with the most to say. They're the ones who know exactly when to speak and exactly what to say to shift the energy in their favor. Listening is your greatest advantage, not passive listening, not just hearing words, but listening like a strategist, searching for patterns, motives, insecurities, contradictions. People reveal everything when they think you're not paying attention. They show you who they are when they talk too much. They try to dominate conversations without realizing they're exposing every angle of their thinking. And if you're truly listening, not to reply but to understand, you become 10 steps ahead without saying a word. You start recognizing what people fear, what they want, what they hide. And once you can see that, influence becomes effortless. Don't waste your words. Don't waste your voice on people who don't value it. Every time you speak without purpose, you dilute your presence. You become predictable, easy to figure out, easy to manipulate. But when you speak with power, when your words carry weight, people lean in, they pause, they reflect, because your silence trained them to value what comes after it. That's what makes your voice a force, not how often it's used, but how precisely it's delivered. Strategic communication means speaking only when your words move something forward. It means asking questions that reveal more than answers. It means stating truth so calmly they leave no room for argument. It means knowing when to withhold information, when to redirect, when to mirror someone's language to shift their mindset without them even realizing it. This is not manipulation. This is mastery. It's knowing that your voice is a tool, not a toy. And the more precise your tool, the greater your impact. People remember how you made them feel, and few things are more powerful than words delivered with clarity, strength, and restraint. So stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. Stop over-explaining to gain approval. You don't need to convince anyone. You need to speak like someone who knows who they are. Someone who doesn't argue with noise. Someone who doesn't lower their voice to match confusion. Every time you listen deeply and speak strategically, you gain control without force. You build presence without performance. And you rise, not because you shouted, but because you chose your moment, delivered your truth, and left silence in your wake. That's the voice that echoes. That's the voice that influences. That's the voice that wins. Not by saying everything, but by saying just enough and letting the world feel the rest. Thinking one step ahead isn't enough anymore. Not in a world where everyone is fighting for control, attention, and advantage. If you want to outsmart anyone, you must train your mind to go deeper. Not just to react to what's in front of you, but to predict what's behind it. You have to ask yourself, why are they saying this now? What are they not saying? What are they hoping I'll overlook? The surface is a distraction. The truth lives beneath it. And the person who learns to read that truth becomes immune to manipulation, immune to confusion, and unstoppable in any situation. Every conversation is layered. Most people only hear the top layer, the words, the tone, the attitude, but there's always something underneath: intent, fear, ego, hidden motives. If you slow your mind down just enough, you can start to see it. You can begin to understand not just what someone is doing, but why they're doing it. And once you understand the why, you start gaining the advantage before a single move is made. It's not about being paranoid, it's about being prepared. Because every time you assume someone's words are truth, you risk missing the strategy hidden inside their silence. When you step into this level of thinking, your emotions begin to serve you instead of sabotage you. You stop reacting to pressure. You stop falling for fake urgency. You stop letting people use tone, status, or fear to push you into decisions that don't serve you. You become grounded, centered, focused, not cold, but clear, because your mind isn't stuck in the present moment. It's analyzing the path behind and ahead. And that's where your strength multiplies. That's when you become the person others can't predict, can't shake, can't control. Most people react. They respond to pressure. They get emotionally pulled into games they never asked to play. But you're not here to react. You're here to outthink, to move in a way that isn't just fast, but deliberate, to look past the noise, the drama, the distractions, and identify what actually matters. This mindset turns every interaction into a map, a puzzle, a pattern. And while others get lost in surface emotion, you're focused on outcome, on positioning, on leverage. That's how intelligent power is built, not by brute force, but by mental clarity. The person who sees the whole board wins the game, not because they're the loudest, not because they're the strongest, but because they think further, deeper, sharper. They understand timing, they understand consequences, and they move with purpose when everyone else is moving with pressure. This is how you separate from the crowd, not by doing more, but by thinking better, not by reacting, but by anticipating, not by chasing the moment, but by mastering it before it even arrives. And when you learn to live from that level of awareness, no one can trick you, rush you, or dominate you because you already saw it coming. And you chose your move in silence. Ego is the most predictable part of a person. It's loud, reactive, and desperate to be seen. And the more someone is driven by ego, the easier they are to control. That's the paradox. The people who appear the strongest often have the biggest blind spots because their ego won't let them question themselves. It won't let them listen. It won't let them pause. And that makes them vulnerable to anyone who understands how to feed or starve it at will. If you want to outsmart someone, study their ego. That's where their pressure points are. That's where their decisions come from. That's where their power begins to slip. When someone craves validation, give it to them, but on your terms. When someone fears being irrelevant, remind them of their importance, but only when it serves your direction. When someone needs to feel dominant, let them believe they are. while you guide the situation from beneath the surface. This is not manipulation. This is emotional intelligence sharpened into strategy. It's understanding that the ego is like a fire. You can pour fuel on it and make it burn out of control, or you can deprive it of oxygen until it flickers into silence. You don't have to crush anyone to win. You don't have to challenge power to take it. In fact, the most effective way to dominate someone driven by ego is to never confront them directly. Let them feel in charge. Let them believe they're leading. Let them think they've already won. Meanwhile, you stay calm, observant, detached. You don't respond to provocations. You don't fall into emotional traps. You simply study, adjust, guide. And when the moment comes, you move so precisely that by the time they realize it, it's already too late to resist. This kind of power can only exist when you've learned to master your own ego first. You cannot outsmart others if you're still trying to prove something to the world. You cannot hold psychological control if you're chasing praise, recognition, or superiority. True dominance comes from neutrality, from being so centered in yourself that you no longer need to be seen to know your worth. That inner quiet is where real control lives, because you're not just reading other people's egos. You're not being ruled by your own. Every person has a weak point, and more often than not, that weak point is pride. Once you identify how someone's identity is built, you'll know exactly what to give them, exactly what to withhold, and exactly how to steer them without force. It's not about being ruthless, it's about being strategic. You don't attack the person, you disarm the ego. And once the ego is neutralized, influence becomes effortless. Power isn't always about confrontation. Sometimes it's about patience, about silence, about knowing exactly where someone's strength turns into blindness. And when you see that, you don't fight it. You use it. Quietly, intelligently, without needing to be noticed. Strength is forged not by venting emotions, but by channeling them into deliberate action. Every heartbeat can be a drum of focus, every breath a signal of inner resolve. When you harness that energy, you become a force that silently dictates outcomes. The environment around you, clouded by chaos and conflicting voices, fades into the background while your internal clarity lights the path forward. You realize that overwhelming pressure is not a punishment but an invitation to excel, a call to rise above mediocrity and claim the space that is rightfully yours. It is in those charged moments, when emotions swirl fiercely and the world seems intent on distracting you, that your true power emerges. You no longer allow yourself to be swept away by turbulent currents of anger, fear, or insecurity. Instead, you stand firm, anchored by the conviction that every challenge is an opportunity to refine your focus and sharpen your strategy. With your mind calm and determined, you transform obstacles into stepping stones, cultivating resilience that becomes your greatest asset. Your silent mastery of emotions becomes the fuel that propels you forward. It cultivates a state of heightened awareness where every nuance carries meaning and every interaction becomes a chance to learn. In this state, you grow immune to the small provocations that once would have unsettled you, replacing reactive impulses with deliberate and meaningful actions. Each moment of composure reinforces the message that you are in control, not only of your responses, but of the influence you assert over every encounter. With each calculated silence, each measured word, you fortify your inner domain. This is the moment when self-awareness fuses with strategy and transforms into unmatched power. It is the essence of true dominance, a mind that remains unshaken amid storms, a spirit that rises above chaos. And as this strength resonates from within you, it changes the dynamics of every relationship, every challenge, every situation. The power to remain undisturbed, to think clearly in the midst of confusion, is what sets you apart in a world that is constantly shifting. This inner fortitude is not born from isolation, but from the understanding that your emotions are tools to be refined, not vulnerabilities to be exploited. They are the raw materials with which you build a legacy of quiet strength, a legacy that inspires trust and commands respect. Every thoughtful pause, every deliberate decision draws you closer to the peak of your potential. When you stand with such unwavering resolve, others begin to notice the invisible force that guides you, an unstoppable momentum that comes from the fusion of emotional control and strategic insight. Embrace this power with humility and determination, for it is the key to unlocking the mastery of your own destiny and outsmarting anyone who dares to challenge your path. Let every silent moment fuel your determination and sharpen your focus. For in the convergence of strategic insight and unyielding emotional discipline, you unlock the unprecedented power to shape your destiny and rise above every challenge. The greatest advantage is not being feared, it's being unreadable. When people can't predict your moves, they lose their leverage. When they don't know your weaknesses, they stop trying to exploit them. When they sense your presence but can't grasp your rhythm, they hesitate. That hesitation is where your power begins. You don't need to be everywhere, say everything, or respond to every invitation. You need to create distance, controlled, intentional, strategic, because proximity gives people access, and access gives them influence. But when you pull back, when you become just out of reach, you become something more powerful than loud. You become mysterious. People chase what they don't fully understand. They're drawn to the quiet confidence of someone who doesn't explain their every move. Someone who doesn't reveal every thought. Someone who doesn't allow emotional exposure to become emotional debt. And in that space where your absence speaks louder than your presence ever could, people begin to question themselves. They begin to fill in the gaps. They create stories, assumptions, expectations, all while you remain centered, unbothered, and in control. That's the kind of influence that moves silently but leaves a lasting mark. When you stop making yourself constantly available, you stop being taken for granted. You stop being expected. You stop being easy to figure out. You begin to hold a different kind of weight. Not the weight of arrogance, but the weight of presence. You walk into a room and don't need to say a word, because people already feel the distance, the discipline, the emotional boundaries you've built. And those boundaries don't push people away. They make them rise to meet you. They filter out the noise. They attract respect without demand. And most importantly, they protect your energy from being drained by those who haven't earned the right to be close. To outsmart anyone, you must protect your space with precision. That means knowing when to disappear, when to withhold, when to let silence carry the weight of your absence. It means allowing curiosity to replace assumption, letting others wonder instead of always answering, holding yourself back, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Because not everything needs to be shared. Not every emotion needs to be expressed. Not every intention needs to be explained. The less people know about you, the less they can use against you. Emotional availability is a gift, but given to the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon used against you. So guard it, protect it. Be close, but never too accessible. Be kind, but never too exposed. Keep enough distance to preserve your clarity, your dignity, your control. And when you live like this, rooted, steady, self-contained, you become the person others study, chase, try to decode, not because you're trying to impress, but because you've made mystery your armor and discipline your strategy. That is the essence of quiet power. And once you master it, the game no longer controls you. You control the game. You don't need to be the fastest, the loudest, or the most visible to win. You need to be the most aware. Awareness is the real edge, the invisible advantage that makes you impossible to corner. Impossible to deceive. The one who sees clearly cannot be shaken. When your mind is awake to patterns, motives, dynamics, and timing, every room you walk into becomes a map, not a mystery. You begin to see past the surface, past the noise, past the performance. You see where people are leaning emotionally, what they're avoiding mentally, and where their guard has slipped unconsciously. That insight turns every conversation into an opportunity and every conflict into a calculation. Most people don't listen. They wait for their turn to speak. They rush to respond, defend, and declare. But the sharp ones, the ones who are truly dangerous, are the ones who pause, observe, absorb. They don't react to pressure. They diagnose it. They don't fall for distractions. They follow the thread that leads to the truth. While others are pulled by emotion, they are anchored in clarity. And when you carry that level of awareness, you're no longer moved by appearances. You're guided by signals no one else is trained to see. This mindset isn't about distrust. It's about discernment. You don't assume everyone is against you, but you don't assume everyone is for you either. You keep your eyes open, not with paranoia, but with purpose. You understand that people present a version of themselves designed to protect their own position. And the more self-aware you become, the more you start recognizing those same patterns in others. You see where they're trying too hard, where they're avoiding vulnerability, where they're positioning themselves without saying it out loud. That kind of vision is rare. And it makes you unshakable. You can't master outcomes if you're blind to intentions. That's why most people stay stuck. They only react to what they can see. But when you develop inner clarity, you don't just see what's happening. You understand why it's happening and what it means next. That's where influence begins. Because when you can see the next 3 steps while others are still confused about the last one, you no longer need to force your way into power. You move with such precision that power starts moving toward you. Let others rush, stumble, and overexpose themselves. Let them be loud while you stay aware. Let them chase outcomes while you observe patterns. Because awareness doesn't make you slower. It makes you smarter. It saves you from traps. It spares you from wasted energy. And it allows you to walk through chaos untouched, focused, and in control. That is how you separate yourself from the crowd. Not by trying to dominate them, but by seeing what they don't see. And once you see clearly, you don't need to shout, chase, or struggle. You simply move in silence. Because now every step is calculated, every word is chosen, and every outcome begins bending in your direction. Control isn't about dominating others. It's about mastering yourself so completely that nothing outside you can shake what's within you. The real battlefield is internal. The person who controls their impulses, their need for attention, their craving for approval, becomes immune to manipulation. The world feeds on reaction. It provokes, tempts, tests, and pressures. And every time you take the bait, you hand over your authority. But the moment you decide to be governed by discipline instead of desire, your entire presence shifts. You stop being reactive. You start being immovable. You walk into situations with composure, not because they're easy, but because you've trained your mind to respond with power, not panic. People who chase control often lose it because they focus outward, on circumstances, people, timing, but nothing out there can give you stability. The only control worth having begins within. That means developing the emotional discipline to pause before you speak, to think before you act, and to walk away without explanation when your peace is at risk. The more you control your energy, the more unpredictable you become to those who try to read you. And the more unpredictable you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. You don't need to react to every word. You don't need to engage every challenge. You don't need to match the energy of those who operate from chaos. When you've mastered your inner world, you don't compete. You command, not with arrogance but with clarity. You don't try to win people over. You let your energy set the tone. That's when the game changes. That's when people start adjusting to your rhythm instead of pulling you into theirs. Because control is magnetic. It's rare. It's respected. And when it's real, it doesn't have to prove itself. Training yourself to hold that power starts with detachment. Not from your goals or your values, but from the outcome. When you no longer fear losing something, you're no longer controlled by it. You act with confidence because your self-worth isn't tied to the result. It's rooted in who you've become. That mindset frees you. It gives you the courage to walk away, the strength to say no, and the vision to move forward without hesitation. No begging, no chasing, no apologizing for your standards. The deepest level of control is calm in the face of chaos. When everything around you is unstable and you remain centered, you become the anchor others silently look to. You become the quiet force that doesn't waver. And in that stillness, people sense something different, something real, something unshakable. That is your edge. That is your leverage. Not in overpowering, but in standing so grounded, so focused, so internally strong, that no tactic, no noise, no pressure can pull you off balance. Control isn't about holding everything together. It's about holding yourself fully and relentlessly, no matter what tries to take it from you. The person who knows how to wait always has the upper hand. Patience is not weakness. It's discipline in motion. It's power in stillness. It's the ability to delay gratification, to stay silent when provoked, to remain still when pressured, and to strike only when the moment is right. Most people move fast because they're afraid. Afraid of missing out. Afraid of being overlooked. Afraid of losing. And that fear makes them reckless. It makes them predictable. But when you are patient, when you operate from a place of inner certainty, you become untouchable. You don't chase. You position. You don't react. You anticipate. You don't beg for timing. You become timing. In a world that runs on urgency, patience becomes a weapon. Everyone wants results now. Recognition now. Victory now. But the most dangerous people are the ones who know how to wait. Not because they're passive, but because they're watching. Because they're collecting data. Because they're letting others reveal themselves while they conserve their own energy. And when they finally move, it's with a level of force, precision, and insight that no one saw coming. Because they didn't waste their energy proving themselves. They invested it mastering themselves. Waiting doesn't mean standing still. It means building silently, preparing constantly, strengthening your core so when the opportunity appears, you don't hesitate. You execute. While others burn out sprinting toward every distraction, you train in silence, knowing your moment will come. And when it does, you won't need luck. you won't need approval. You'll already be ready. Because the person who waits with intention always walks in with advantage. Patience sharpens clarity. It strips away desperation. It silences noise. When you learn to wait with purpose, you gain a calm that others can't fake. You become hard to provoke, hard to read, hard to control. That frustrates people who feed on emotional reactions. They want you to move fast. They want you to respond impulsively. But when you don't, when you remain still, they begin to unravel. Their tactics lose power. Their control slips. Because you've taken away their greatest weapon, your reaction. Stillness is not stagnation. It is the art of strategic restraint. You know what you want. You know where you're going. But you're not in a rush to prove it. You understand that true power lies not in being everywhere at once, but in appearing only when it matters most. That makes your presence impactful, your voice valuable, your moves unforgettable. And as others exhaust themselves trying to stay relevant, you conserve your fire until it's time to ignite. Patience is not waiting passively, it's waiting actively, intelligently, relentlessly. It's trusting your preparation, your vision, and your strategy more than you trust the noise around you. And once you master that, you no longer feel the need to match the world's speed. You move at the pace of power, steady, intentional, unstoppable. The highest form of dominance isn't controlling others. It's controlling the environment so others adjust to you without realizing it. This is the silent game. It's not about being in the spotlight. It's about being the reason the spotlight shifts. When your presence alters the temperature of a room, not through intimidation, but through influence, you've stepped beyond surface power into real authority. Real authority doesn't ask for compliance. It creates an atmosphere where resistance becomes irrelevant. Not because people are afraid, but because your energy demands alignment. Not through fear, but through force of character, unshakable presence, and disciplined silence. You don't rise by competing for attention. You rise by becoming the one who doesn't need it. While others fight to be seen, you observe. While others chase approval, you withhold yours. And in that restraint, you gain psychological leverage. Because the person who doesn't need to be included becomes the one everyone wants to include. The one who doesn't seek validation becomes the one others try to impress. This is how influence is built, not through noise, but through necessity. You make people feel like they need your presence, not because you begged for it, but because your energy shifted what they thought was possible. To reach this level, you must be immune to flattery, unaffected by opinion, and uninterested in recognition. You must learn to find peace in solitude, strength in restraint, and power in distance. Because the less you need from others, the more control you gain over yourself. And the more control you have over yourself, the harder you become to manipulate. When people sense that your actions are not driven by external pressure, they begin to question their own. You become a mirror to their insecurity, a reflection of what they lack. And in that moment, you gain influence, not by trying to dominate, but by simply being what they cannot ignore. Everything changes when you stop chasing position and start embodying presence. Position fades, titles change, roles shift, but presence, real presence, can't be taken. It can't be faked. It's built through consistency, through boundaries, through the relentless practice of being unfazed. When others try to provoke you and you don't flinch. When situations try to throw you off course and you stay still. When people try to pressure you and you simply smile and say nothing, that's when the game bends.